"You worthless piece of trash." My husband screamed those words right before his foot slammed into my pregnant belly. I hit that restaurant floor hard while 50 people watched. He called me a gold digger with nothing. He had no idea my father could buy his entire existence with pocket change. Before we get into this story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. You're about to hear how I went from being disrespected on the floor of a five-star restaurant to watching karma serve the coldest dish of justice you've ever seen. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of this. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Gabriel, and 3 years ago, I thought I'd found the love of my life. His name was Andre, and when we met at a charity auction downtown, he had this smile that could light up a room. He was tall, confident, well-dressed, and he told me he was a real estate developer working on luxury condos across the city. I was 25, working as a curator at an art gallery, living my independent life, and honestly, I wasn't looking for anything serious. But Andre had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world when he talked to you. We got married after dating for just 8 months. Looking back now, I can see how fast everything moved, but at the time, it felt like destiny. Here's the thing though, there was something about my life that Andre didn't know. Something I'd purposely kept hidden. My father, Thomas, wasn't just successful. He was a self-made billionaire. He owned a construction empire that built half the skyscrapers in this city. He had stakes in 3 major hospitals, and his commercial real estate portfolio was worth more than most people could count. But growing up, my father always told me to be careful about who I let into my life. He said, "Baby girl, when people know what we have, you'll never know if they love you or love what you can give them." So when I met Andre, I introduced myself as just Gabrielle. I drove a modest car, lived in a nice but regular apartment, and I never mentioned my family's wealth. I wanted someone to love me for me, not for my last name or my father's bank account. Andre seemed perfect. He was ambitious, hardworking, and he never asked me for money. He always insisted on paying for dates, and he talked about building a future together where we'd both contribute equally. Thought I'd found the real thing. The first year of marriage was good. Not perfect, but good. Andre was busy with his business deals, and I was managing the gallery. We'd come home, have dinner, talk about our days. Normal couple stuff, but then little things started to change. He'd make comments about what I was wearing. He'd ask why I needed to go out with my friends so much. He started saying my father called too often, and that maybe I was a daddy's girl who couldn't make decisions on her own. I brushed it off. I told myself he was just stressed about work, that all marriages had adjustments. Then I got pregnant. I was 6 weeks along when I took that test, and I was terrified, but also excited. We'd talked about kids, and Andre always said he wanted a family. So when I told him, I expected joy. And at first, that's what I got. He picked me up, spun me around, kissed me, told me he couldn't wait to be a father. But that excitement lasted maybe 3 days. After that, something in him shifted. He became distant, cold. He'd look at my body with this expression I couldn't quite read, and he started making comments. "You're already getting thick," he'd say. Or, "Make sure you don't let yourself go completely." By the time I was 4 months pregnant, the verbal abuse had become constant. He told me I was lazy for feeling tired. He said I was using the pregnancy as an excuse to be useless. He made me quit my job at the gallery because he said I needed to focus on being a good mother. But then he'd turn around and say I contributed nothing to the household. The worst part? He started controlling all the money. I had no access to our joint account. He gave me an allowance like I was a child. And slowly, systematically, he cut me off from everyone I loved. He said my friends were bad influences. He said my father was too controlling and that I needed to set boundaries. Like an idiot, I believed him. I started declining invitations. I stopped calling my dad as much. When my father would call me, I'd lie and say everything was wonderful. I could hear the concern in his voice, but I'd tell him, "Daddy, I'm fine. Andre is taking good care of me." I was protecting a man who was destroying me piece by piece, and I didn't even fully realize it. Then I found the text messages. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was 5.5 months pregnant. Andre's phone was on the kitchen counter, and it kept buzzing. I wasn't trying to snoop, but when I glanced at the screen, I saw a message from someone named Lauren. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My hands started shaking. I unlocked his phone. He'd never changed the password. And what I found made me physically sick. Months of messages, pictures, plans to meet up. Lauren worked as his secretary, and apparently, she'd been much more than that for almost a year. I confronted him that night. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He laughed. He actually laughed and said, "What did you expect? Look at yourself. You think I want to touch that?" He pointed at my pregnant belly like it was something disgusting. I felt something break inside me that night, but I still didn't leave. I had nowhere to go, or at least that's what I'd convinced myself. He'd isolated me so completely that I felt trapped. 2 weeks later was our third wedding anniversary. Andre told me we were going to dinner at Belmont Hall, this upscale restaurant downtown where we'd had our first date. I thought maybe, just maybe, he was trying to fix things. I put on the one nice maternity dress I had that still fit, did my makeup, tried to feel beautiful even though I felt broken inside. When we got to the restaurant, I should have known something was wrong. Andre was on his phone the whole drive, smirking at his screen. We walked into Belmont Hall, and the hostess led us to a table. That's when I saw her, Lauren, sitting at our table. She was wearing a tight red dress, her hair perfectly styled, and she had this smug smile on her face. I stopped walking. I looked at Andre and said, "What is this?" He shrugged and said, "It's just dinner, Gabrielle. Don't be dramatic." The restaurant was packed. It was a Friday night, and people were already starting to look at us. I should have walked out right then, but I was 6 months pregnant, exhausted, and honestly, I was in shock. I sat down. Lauren reached across the table like she was going to touch my hand and said, "I've heard so much about you." The condescension in her voice was thick. I pulled my hand back and looked at Andre. I said, "You brought your mistress to our anniversary dinner." He rolled his eyes like I was being unreasonable. The dinner was a nightmare. They talked to each other like I wasn't there. They laughed at inside jokes. At one point, Lauren put her hand on Andre's arm, right in front of me. I felt humiliation burning through my entire body. Finally, I stood up. My voice was shaking, but I said, "I'm done. I'm leaving." Andre grabbed my wrist hard and pulled me back down into my chair. He leaned in close and said, "You're not going anywhere. You're going to sit here and remember that you have nothing without me. No job, no money, nowhere to go." Something in me snapped. I stood up again, and this time I said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "Take your hands off me." People were definitely watching now. Andre's face turned red with rage. He stood up so fast, his chair fell backward, and then he said it. Those words that still echo in my head. "You worthless piece of trash. You think you're somebody. You're nothing. A broke, pathetic." I tried to walk away. I had my hand on my belly, protecting my baby, and I turned my back on him. That's when I felt it. His foot connected with my lower back and side, the force sending me forward. I fell hard, my pregnant stomach hitting the edge of a nearby table before I crashed to the floor. The pain was immediate and sharp. I heard gasps from around the restaurant. I heard glasses breaking. And then I heard Lauren say, "Oh my God, Andre, what did you do?" I was on the floor of that restaurant, 6 months pregnant, in pain, and terrified for my baby. And you know what? At least 50 people saw it happen. But for the longest 10 seconds of my life, nobody moved. They just stared. It was like they couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. Then finally, an older black woman, she must have been in her 60s, rushed over to me. She knelt beside me and said, "Baby, don't move. Someone call an ambulance right now." Her name was Miss Dorothy, and she stayed with me, holding my hand, telling me to breathe. The restaurant manager was yelling at Andre to leave. Andre was backing away, his face pale. like he'd just realized what he'd done. Lauren had already disappeared. And me, I was lying on that cold restaurant floor, crying, praying that my baby was okay. The ambulance came within minutes. The paramedics were gentle and professional, but I could see the anger in their eyes when they asked what happened. Miss Dorothy told them everything. She gave them her phone number and said she'd testify to whatever I needed. At the hospital, they hooked me up to monitors immediately. The sound of my baby's heartbeat filled the room, and I sobbed with relief. The baby was okay. Bruised ribs for me, some swelling, but my baby was okay. The doctor was a kind woman named Dr. Hughes, and she sat on the edge of my bed and said, "Gabriel, your baby is fine right now, but you cannot go back to whoever did this to you. Stress alone could cause complications, but another incident like this could kill you both." I nodded, tears streaming down my face, and then I did what I should have done months ago. I called my father. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. When he answered, his voice was warm and happy. "Gabby, baby girl, I was just thinking about you." And I broke. I completely broke down. I sobbed so hard I couldn't speak. I heard the panic in his voice. "Gabrielle, what's wrong? Where are you? Tell me where you are right now." Through my tears, I managed to say, "Daddy, I'm at Memorial Hospital. I need you." I didn't have to say anything else. He said, "I'm on my way. Don't move. I'm coming." He lived 45 minutes away, but he made it in 30. When my father walked through that hospital room door, I saw something I'd rarely seen in his eyes, pure rage. But when he looked at me, his expression softened. He walked over, kissed my forehead, and said, "Baby girl, I'm here. Tell me everything." And I did. I told him about the verbal abuse, the isolation, the affair, the financial control, and finally, about what happened at the restaurant. I watched my father's jaw clench tighter and tighter. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I told you to call me if anything ever went wrong. Why didn't you call me?" I didn't have a good answer. Shame, pride, fear, all of the above? My younger brother Kevin showed up about an hour later, and he was ready to go find Andre himself. My father put a hand on his shoulder and said, "No, we handle this the right way." Then my father made one phone call, just one. I don't know who he called, but I heard him say, "Handle it, all of it. I want it done by morning." Then he hung up, turned to me, and said, "You're never going back there. You're coming home. And that man will never hurt you again." That night, I slept in that hospital bed with my father in a chair beside me and my brother on the couch. I felt safe for the first time in months. What I didn't know was that while I slept, my father's entire network was moving like a well-oiled machine. See, Andre's successful real estate business. It was built on loans from my father's bank. The luxury condos he was so proud of, they were on land owned by my father's company. His investors, most of them had business ties to my father. Andre had built his entire life on my family's infrastructure without even knowing it. By the time the sun came up, Andre's world was collapsing. His business loan was called in immediately, the entire amount due in 30 days. His property investments were frozen pending legal review. His business partners received phone calls informing them of Andre's domestic violence charges and suggesting they distance themselves immediately. The penthouse apartment he was so proud of, lease terminated. That luxury car he drove, repossessed before lunch. It was leased through a dealership my father owned. But my father didn't stop there. Lauren, the secretary, found herself unemployed by noon. Apparently, she'd been embezzling from Andre's company too. And my father's lawyers made sure that information found its way to the right authorities. Andre's bank accounts were frozen pending the divorce investigation. Every door that had been opened to him slammed shut in a single day, and he had no idea why it was happening or who was behind it. 2 days later, I was released from the hospital. My father's legal team served Andre with divorce papers, a restraining order, and criminal charges for domestic violence and assault on a pregnant woman. The evidence was overwhelming. Hospital records, witness statements from the restaurant, Miss Dorothy's testimony, and the text messages I'd found documenting the affair and financial abuse. The court hearing happened 2 weeks later. I was 7 months pregnant, sitting in that courtroom with my father on one side and my brother on the other. Andre walked in looking like a completely different person. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by something ill-fitting and cheap. His hair wasn't styled. He looked exhausted and desperate. When he saw me, he tried to approach, but the bailiff stopped him. He said, "Gabrielle, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was stressed. I made mistakes, but we can fix this." I didn't respond. My lawyer stood up and addressed the judge. For the next hour, they laid out everything: the abuse, the control, the affair, the assault. Andre's lawyer tried to mount a defense, but there was nothing to defend. 50 witnesses had watched him kick his pregnant wife in a public restaurant. When the judge asked if I wanted to make a statement, I stood up. My voice was steady when I said, "Your Honor, for almost 2 years, I let this man make me feel small. I let him convince me I was worthless. I protected him, lied for him, and isolated myself for him. He kicked me while I was carrying his child. He chose his mistress over his family. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for protection and freedom for me and my daughter." The judge granted the emergency divorce, full custody, and a permanent restraining order. Andre lost everything legally, just as he'd lost everything financially. As I walked out of that courtroom, I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired but relieved. It was over. I moved back to my family's estate. My childhood bedroom had been converted into a beautiful suite for me and the baby. My father hired a nurse to help me through the rest of the pregnancy. Miss Dorothy, that beautiful woman from the restaurant, came to visit me. We became close friends. She told me she'd survived her own abusive marriage 30 years ago, and that seeing me on that floor brought everything back. She promised to be there for me, and she kept that promise. 3 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. I named her Naya, which means purpose, because she gave me mine. When my father held his granddaughter for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. He whispered to her, "Your mama is the strongest woman I know, and you're going to grow up knowing your worth." I started a non-profit organization 6 months after Naya was born. It's called Safe Harbor, and it provides resources, legal assistance, and emergency housing for domestic violence survivors. I used my family's resources to create something that could help other women escape situations like mine. Miss Dorothy volunteers there 3 days a week. As for Andre, last I heard, he's working a regular job, living in a studio apartment, and barely making ends meet. Lauren left him the moment the money dried up. He tried to contact me a few times, but every message was blocked by the restraining order. He lost his daughter, his wife, his business, his reputation, and his freedom. All because he thought he could put his hands on a woman he believed had nowhere to go. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I ignored. The love bombing at the beginning, the gradual isolation, the way he tested boundaries little by little. I ignored them because I wanted so badly to believe I'd found real love without my family's influence. But here's what I learned. Real love doesn't isolate you. Real love doesn't control you. Real love doesn't make you feel small, and real love never ever puts its hands on you. My father told me something after Naya was born. He said, "Baby girl, I gave you space to make your own choices, even when it terrified me. But I need you to know, my job as your father didn't stop when you got married. If someone hurts you, they hurt me, and I will move heaven and earth to protect you." He did exactly that. Today, I'm thriving. Naya is happy and healthy. I'm back working in the art world, now running my own gallery. I have my family, my real friends, and my purpose. Andre took a lot from me, but he couldn't take my strength. He couldn't take my future. And he definitely couldn't take my father's ability to dismantle everything he'd built on borrowed power. The last time Andre tried to reach out, it was through his lawyer, asking for visitation rights. My lawyer's response was simple. Your client assaulted a pregnant woman in front of 50 witnesses, lost all parental rights in court, and has a permanent restraining order. This conversation is over, and it was. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Whether you're going through something similar or you know someone who is, remember, you deserve respect, you deserve safety, and you deserve love that uplifts you, not destroys you. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my situation. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now because I share real stories that need to be told. Remember, never let anyone dim your light, especially when you're carrying life inside you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.